The Everything Sequel podcast is brought to you by Tuity Fitness and the Vegas Beer Guys.
The Everything Sequel podcast contains explicit language. 'Cause we learned it from you, Dad.
Everything Sequel presents Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, Part 2. When last we left our fearless frenemies, Tom narrowly avoided defeat on the issue of pair floating by mentioning something that J.J. Abrams did wrong somewhere else, while Mike was struck dumb by George Lucas's predatory costuming of Natalie Portman. Sifo Dyas!
Hello and welcome, everyone, to the Everything Sequel podcast. This is an Attack of the Clones edition, I'll say. Part 2, as Tom just said. Michael Shantz here of the How Dare You Awards. And, of course, the man giving you the matinee serial introduction himself, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Say hi.
She seems to be on top of things.
I don't know if you're doing his actual voice or the voice from the Clone Wars anymore.
Yeah, spoiler alert, before we finished recording this episode, we watched Star Wars The Clone Wars for our watch-along right in the middle. So everything is colored by that now.
Just fucks everything up.
But this is also the moment where Ewan McGregor just completely bypasses Alec Guinness and goes straight to Roger Moore. I mean, that's an Octopussy line, if ever I heard one.
Yeah. If there's one man that knows an Octopussy line, it's you.
Toro sounds like a lot of bull. Best Spawn cold open ever.
Yeah, I like that one.
I flawless. No notes.
You hear me? No time to die?
Fake mustaches, caps that turn around. I mean, what more do you want? A flying car. It's got it all.
Yeah.
Speaking of flying cars.
Here we are, part 2. We're back with Attack of the Clones.
We are.
And when last we left, I believe we had just gotten... It's time for murder, Tom.
Time for murder?
Yeah, we're back on Tatooine. Well,
there's a lot that happens before the ruthless slaughter of specifically women and children.
There is.
The targeted mass murder of women and children.
But the big note is time to murder some women and children. We'll get there.
I understand that would be your takeaway from what happens on Tatooine. However, you know, when we go back in the Naboo cruiser, which again is something that already happened in Phantom Menace. They already went to Tatooine in a Naboo cruiser, and now they're doing it again.
I noticed that, like, they really show that thing landing like it's the first time we've ever seen it.
We saw it exactly one movie ago.
Right.
And again, you know, along with the fact we remarked in the Phantom Menace episode, the Mos Espa downtown, the way that is depicted shows a restraint that Lucas does not have in the special edition for how he films Tatooinean settings.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like pure OG Star Wars, like pure 77 pre-special edition, you know, barren backgrounds, like an actual.
Yeah, right.
It looks like an actual desert planet, not a desert planet populated by comedy droids.
Muppets. Yeah.
And you know, as if that wasn't enough, Phantom Menace, we're gonna re-meet Watto.
We are. Now wait, before we re-meet him,
yes.
I was having a conversation with friend of the show, Matthew Aldrich.
I dread to think what he thinks about this film.
That's what I have to tell you. He was really excited to listen to the episodes and not at all excited to rewatch the movies before he listened to the episodes. And he wanted me to tell you that you're an apologist.
Yes, I am a
And
prequel apologist.
He wants to say that to your face and that he disapproves. And then
I own that.
He told me, I think yesterday, that he's never been so bored as when he rewatched The Phantom Menace.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I never had that problem. I think with the Phantom Menace, just because you know that there's a good set piece that's about 10,
on the horizon.
on the horizon,
Yeah.
about 10, 15 minutes away. So I never had that issue with the Phantom Menace. There's always some. I mean, in terms of like fantasy world building, there's always something going on.
Mm-hmm.
I've never, boredom has never been my
I don't
reaction.
entirely disagree with you. Yeah, more confusion for me.
Visible confusion, but
Baff-
not
Baffled. I'm baffled as I watch these movies sometimes.
but it's full of choices, and those choices I would say are diverting.
Diplomatic. All right, back to
Aggressive negotiations, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So we meet Watto.
Yes, we do, and again,
Or re-meet Watto.
this is the best example, I think, in the movie of George Lucas's simultaneous do-over and double down, because he's a more understated character, and yet somehow more anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
They've given him. They were like, you know what? I'm not sure the anti-Semitism is reading. Let's give him a Jewish hat.
Right. And
But the
although that's
character
terrible,
the character has a melancholy about it that
yeah,
he didn't
so,
have in Phantom Menace.
and it, without ever saying it,
Yeah,
it feels as though he has fallen on hard times.
sure.
And then I will also say that the moment Anakin comes up and says, let me help you with that, and he starts trying to figure something out, the CGI on Watto in that moment is really actually quite fantastic. Because he has that moment within his eyes that he's registering that it is Anakin.
Yeah,
And it's actually quite striking. It's really, really good work.
and there is, I dare say, an underlying menace, a phantom menace, if you will, in this scene as to what Anakin's gonna do. And
Yeah.
I don't, it's partly the voice acting, partly, as you say, the animation. But Watto's reaction is clearly, is he gonna throttle me?
Hurt me.
Is he gonna kill
yeah.
me? Is he gonna snap my neck right here and now? And it all reads, but no one's really saying it. But clearly, the power dynamics have changed, and everyone is playing that. It's being directed that way. It's being animated that way.
Yeah.
So I really like it, but when I feel like I could do a screen grab and put it alongside Alec Guinness's Fagin in the original Oliver Twist, and it would, you could literally match the faces.
Right.
So it's like it's that.
Well,
that
you almost half
combination.
expect some sort of song from Fiddler on the Roof to, burst from this
Yes.
terrible creature and is wearing his hat.
Yeah. So we've had that's a big chunk of Phantom Menace callbacks, and then we cut away to a big chunk of Empire Strikes Back
Yeah, we do. Yeah, right.
callbacks, because
But
we're in an asteroid field.
We're in an asteroid field, but we have that kind of classic sequel one-upmanship because we've got these sort of, they kind of feel like depth charges. So it feels like they're kind of adding some Star Trek, some Navy battle shit from Star Trek,
That's true.
But I also think I really like the effect. I think it's especially the sound. The sound to me is really cool.
I like the sequence. I mean, again, the problem with it is a prequel problem of, a lot of things that happen in future movies originate here in a short period of time. This is what Alex Robinson on Star Wars Minute calls the Indiana Phoenix problem. That in prequels, everyone gets their defining characteristics in a matter of minutes.
Sure.
And this is where Boba Fett learns the trick of hiding on the asteroid and
Yeah.
from
Right.
Obi-Wan, and it's so you're like, oh, okay, like I get it, I understand, I understand what this will lead to, but it's also still a bit theme park ride, but it feels like it has real stakes and a connection to the story, like the we're following the pursuit story
Mm-hmm.
that Obi-Wan's on.
Yeah, he's still solving his mystery.
He's solving his mystery, and if this guy gets away, it's going to be a big setback. So
Right.
it's kind of, in some ways, it reminds me stylistically of the underwater scenes from Phantom
Mm.
Menace, especially because there's transparent bubble explosions.
Sure.
It's clearly an effect they hold in reserve whenever they feel like they need to throw something in. But it's the opposite in just like it feels like it has stakes and a drive and a direction.
Mm-hmm.
So um I kind of appreciate it. It's definitely an upgrade from
Yeah.
from that.
Yeah, I mean,
Even though
you
it's sort
know,
of covering the same ground of
yeah, I
like,
was just gonna say that despite the fact that it feels repetitive,
mm-hmm.
and like you said, and I think maybe we were talking about this for the Clone Wars episode.
It's
Just this
impossible to
idea,
tell anymore.
yeah, there's just that idea that everything has to find a connection
Yeah.
to a connection to a connection,
Right.
and you don't have to do that, but
No,
you know.
you really don't.
But having said that, I think there's still some good-looking effects, and like I said, I like the sound work, and as part of the case of Obi-Wan,
Yeah,
it all reads and makes sense.
exactly. I completely agree. Then we go back. We go back. We're in deja vu territory here, and it
Totally,
continues
yeah.
when they get to the homestead, the Lars
And
homestead on
and
Tatooine.
you see C-3PO.
You see C-3PO, and you get those kind of widescreen vistas that
Mm-hmm.
George Lucas has in the original Star Wars. That I guess is a sort of tribute to the sort of CinemaScope era, to directors
Right.
like John Ford and Nicholas Ray. That kind of look. It's in a
But
really
what bothers
really okay. Well, yeah,
there's just sort of this. The second I see C-3PO, I think, what is George thinking? Because there's no sense that he was made, born, and lived on Tatooine, and including going to the very place that he goes to in Star Wars for the first time. I mean, we know he has his mind wiped, but
Well, yeah,
R2 didn't.
but
and we talked about this before, but
R2 didn't, and crucially, Lars didn't.
yeah,
Why doesn't he
exactly.
remember this droid?
Why doesn't he remember this person? Not this
Presumably,
person, but
he's
this droid
yeah.
that.
Well, that's it.
That
I think that's
you
the
look
key.
familiar to me.
I think Lucas is resting on the assumption that he's such a droid racist that he wouldn't know one protocol droid from another.
Maybe.
But that's all subtext. That it could equally be that he just forgot that by putting C-3PO here, it fucks
to
everything
me,
up
to,
in the
to me,
timeline.
it reads more like George forgot what was in his first fucking movie.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
You know?
yeah, that's what I mean. It's kind of and it's interesting, like that C-3PO's doing the job that Uncle Owen gets him to do next in the original Star Wars. Like
Right.
he's basically saying, when he asks him for his resume in the Jawa scene,
Mm-hmm.
he's basically asking him to do what he's doing now. So
Yeah.
if that doesn't
Right.
jog Owen's memory,
Nothing will.
nothing, absolutely nothing will. I didn't mean to say Lars. Sorry, I meant to say Uncle Owen. Would remember.
Oh yeah, you said Lars.
Lars is. Wait a minute, is Lars their first name or the last name?
I don't know.
Oh, is it Owen Lars?
Yeah, maybe.
Why are they all Danish as well? Why do they all have Danish names? Or played by Danish actors? Don't understand.
Oh, that's great. I always liked the. There was like a packaging of a Star Wars toy that said Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru. It was just two burned skeletons. That speaks to my morbid sense of humor.
Absolutely. And that's all here. The foreshadow of that is all here. I think how
Mhm.
disconnected they are out there in the desert. What's happened to Shmi in the interim? You know,
Sure.
that's a foreshadow of that kind of frontier danger that is part of the space western aspect of Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
That was there in the original. And you
And
know,
it's kind of
I
it's
like
driven
it.
home once you realize that she was kidnapped and
Yeah, just looking for. She was just trying to gathering some mushrooms.
yeah, right.
Some.
Like so many of us.
It's every time I think I understand the kind of farm economy of Tatooine, they throw in another wrinkle. I'm like, so do they sell the mushrooms? Is that how they make their money, or
Hmm.
are they are they selling water? Are they like evaporating water, or are they what are they doing? Like
Well,
what
I
are they
also it's
trying?
I think
What's their ultimate products? Is what I want to know.
I just think it's also it always struck me as funny because, what what mushrooms need more than anything is darkness and water.
Yeah,
And here she is looking for mushrooms on this desert planet. Nothing but
right. Yeah.
sun, no
Well,
water.
it's growing on. It's a. I mean, it does happen. It happens. It used to happen in my backyard. In summer, they would get mushrooms from the water cooling down. The if like the water drying quickly, and then it would leave mushrooms.
All right then.
They're
I stand corrected.
in ter- in terms of nature, they're correct, but it complicates the economics of what they're
Hmm.
actually farming. It's interesting as well. Like I mean, I think we disagree on this slightly, but for me, Phantom Menace always felt centuries away from Star Wars, but this feels like we're within touching distance of 77 Star Wars. I mean, not least because they recreated the whole thing from scratch. I mean, they went back
Right.
and they used actual still production stills to
Were
remake
they
it
at the
on
same site?
Homestead. I believe so, or at the very least, they literally they rebuilt it exactly as it was for the
Yeah, I
movie.
mean, I'll agree with you that I think it falls in and out. By the time he's on his speeder and sunset riding
Yeah,
around, you lose that sense
oh,
of
I
what
love
you're
that.
talking about. But when
I love
they're,
that sequence.
I just don't think it looks
Hmm.
as
But that's more of a
I don't think it
yeah,
has the reality that you're talking
no,
about when
true.
he's at the homestead.
But I mean that's
So I
more
think
of
it's
a
uneven in that way.
yeah. But that's more of a callback to Phantom Menace because you assume that because of this the same backdrops of the pod race, right? You were
Hmm.
supposed to think that it just it's like time catching up with
Yeah.
the last time he traveled this land. He was a carefree child, and now he's a crazed.
A would-be murderer.
Yeah, he's about to go and commit some mass murder.
Yeah. But I do agree with you. I think it harkens back to the original Star Wars in parts, like when he's traveling around, when he's talking to the Jawas, and
Yeah,
that kind of thing. It also feels like the Mandalorian borrowed from that.
agreed. Yeah,
So there's some good
all
stuff in there.
there is. Although nothing will beat that. I think it's the first episode of the second season of The Mandalorian where he's going along on a speeder and in profile, and then Timothy Oliphant comes by in a pod, like
Right.
a pod that's like noticeably more phallic than what the Mandalorian's riding. It's probably my favorite moment of TV Star Wars.
That's great.
And yeah, everything I think it reverts to a more classical Hollywood filming style, like
Mm.
the silhouette moment when you
Yeah.
just see Padme and Anakin in silhouette. It's like I'm sure that's a reference to some Hollywood film somewhere. It also makes me think a little bit of the
Well,
poster that we talked about with the Darth Vader shadow.
yeah, right. It makes
It's
me
like,
think of that. It also makes me think of Luke looking at the two suns.
mm-hmm,
It's you're adding a character and it's a different emotional moment, but
yeah,
I think it harkens back to that.
definitely. And I think it was the right choice to I guess psychologically use Anakin's guilt about his mother as the driving force for his turn to evil. And I think this works a lot better to me than the sort of fear of losing Padme in the next film. I think as a
Hmm.
device to sort of get him closer to Vader, this to me is much more psychologically plausible than the Padme. Or at least they should have shown that it was two sides of the same coin. In the movies they
Right.
seem entirely separate.
They do, but I also, because I agree with you in spirit,
In Force
and I,
Ghost,
yeah, yeah, in Force Ghost, but I've always had a hard time, and you know, it part of it feels tacked on because there's been 10 years, and really all we get is at the beginning of this movie saying, "So you still having those nightmares? Don't worry, let go of your fear."
well, yeah, but I mean, he's got other stuff to do, and we all that stuff we learned about in the elevator.
Yeah,
That's been
exactly.
occupying his mind.
But
Rescuing
I guess
Obi-Wan from a
part of it,
pit of
part of
gun
it too,
darts.
is the dickishness of the Jedi Knights.
Sure.
Until these sets of movies, you didn't really have a sense of what pieces of shit they are. You just
No.
can't see your
Well,
mother ever again,
yeah, I
and
mean,
that just doesn't seem to jive with
yeah, only
how
Obi-Wan.
for the morality that we carry within ourselves. Of course, he should have been allowed to check up on her, maybe even help her in some way, but he didn't. And so,
But
and
all the guilt we
all I
carry,
have,
yeah.
to me, at the beginning of this movie, it always feels as though somebody said, "George, why does he care now?" And he goes, "Well, we'll just add a line about he's having nightmares."
Mm, but I think it's that 10 year, it's that 10 years where he trusted the Jedi that he should walk away from that, and then in his absence, she's killed, and I think it's that guilt that then turns into you know rage and murder.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that to me is sort of like it's the turning point, but then they walk that back as the turning point, and to me that's the part of it that doesn't track for me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea that he gets away with this because in context it's kind of a obviously goes beyond self-defense, but it's still within the realms of justifiable revenge just about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
And I like the way that that's morally pitched, and it just seems like the next, well, we'll talk about it, how successful it is in the next movie when we get there, but
Mm-hmm.
I think it's much less successful as a
I
as a
agree. Yeah.
as a sort of as the kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back. I think this should be the straws that breaks the camel's back, and then from this point onwards, um it's a kind of
I do
straight
think.
line.
Yeah, I agree with you in the sense of this should be the straw that breaks the camel's back, and then he carries it with him.
Yeah, and then he goes into war, and he can just murder people, and no one says anything. And everyone's
Yeah,
just like,
right.
"Good job, well done, you murdered all those
Well,
people,
see, I think it
fantastic.
lends to
That's what
my
we wanted you
argument.
to do."
I also think it lends to my argument from before. It's this thing that he carries around that maybe the other Jedi should be able to feel, but they can't.
Well, Yoda feels it.
No, I know,
Yeah.
but I'm saying I think it would be cool if Vader was powerful enough that he could keep a secret, that he just carries it with him,
Yeah.
and kind of playing the duality of I'm a Jedi, but really I'm walking a different path. I see a better way, and the better way might be the dark side.
Mm. Yeah.
I like that. I wish it was more present in, say, the rest of this movie and then into the next movie, but
Yeah.
because they don't do that.
Although I kind of like that, war gets in the way, and then, you know, everyone kind of forgets what happened because, that dramatically makes sense to
I'll
me.
tell
That
you who
it's like,
shouldn't forget what happened. Padme.
yeah,
He makes that confession. She's like, "Yeah, we all got problems, we get frustrated, bro."
yeah. I mean, it is. It's not very. That part of it, I agree, is not very well handled. Where she, when someone tells you that they've committed mass murder, your first instinct shouldn't be to go over and hug them.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
You're
It's
my
like,
guy.
yeah. But again, it's like, you've got the buffer of, in quotes, the sand people, right? It's like, they're not really
Mm-hmm.
people. These droids are not really people. It's
Mm-hmm.
all this kind of subhuman deniability that is clearly present in the galaxy. It's like there's an undercurrent
Sure.
of it everywhere in the galaxy, and it kind of feeds into everyone's reaction to everything, but we never talk about it.
Right.
Apart from in that
But I
scene in Dexter's
also
diner.
but I also there's one moment within all of this that always makes me think, well, no wonder he turns into Vader. He's such a piece of shit. And it's when his mom dies
Hmm.
and Shmi, her like head falls back with her slack jaw open. And
Yeah.
he doesn't even cradle her head, Tom. He just lets her slack jaw back with that uncomfortable position. I always think, what a dick. You're a bad son. Be a little more caring of your poor dead mom.
Yeah. We haven't even discussed what do you think of the sort of the her remarrying and then inheriting
Two new,
a,
or
a,
well, a stepson and a
yeah, stepson
daughter-in-law.
and a daughter-in-law, and then that's Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru.
Right.
Apart from it doesn't bump me apart from the ages and the
Uh-huh.
C-3PO.
The C-3PO of it all
discontinuity. Yeah.
is a bad idea.
Although you mentioned Star Trek in the asteroid field, I think there's a bit of Star Trek, the opening of Star Trek V, when we find C-3PO in the desert, like turning, like looking for water, turning that.
Yeah, right.
Keep expecting an overacting horse to appear.
Right, exactly. To be
A
trotting in the distance.
A Shatner horse, yeah.
Shatner. It doesn't really bump me though.
No,
it all.
I've never had an issue with this. I think
Yeah.
it
I also.
and again, it's up to the next movie to account for why they automatically go to them to bring up Luke, and they don't. Like, they specifically don't. And as far as I can tell, because Lucas, they went to Tunisia here, and before they left, they filmed the final scene of Revenge of the Sith.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the behind the scene footage of in the making of George Luke, the guy behind the camera's like, "What are you doing there, George?" He goes, "Oh yeah, I'm just filming a scene for Revenge of the Sith." As in, like, what's the scene? It's like, can't tell you. It's like, well, what happens if? It's sort of like, why are you doing that? It's like, because I don't want to come back. I don't want to have to come back just for this one shot. Again, doesn't want to leave his house.
Doesn't want to leave his home.
But that, because of that sort of, and in the sense of it, you're like, oh, that's great, that's great production economy because you're saving a lot of time and resources and money. But
sure.
At the same time, we do need some explanation as to why Obi-Wan thinks, I know. I mean, Yoda suggests it, but I think we need more than, like, I think we need to, sort of like why that would be a great hiding place.
Do we need more? Because we know it's going to happen anyway.
We know it's going to happen anyway, but I'd like some sense of why they pick, because, Space Jimmy Smits is giving us he's like, oh, my wife can't conceive, and
yeah, that's true.
And she'll be safe there. It's this peaceful planet, and blah blah blah. And then it's just like, don't do what you want with the boy. Just get him out of here.
Right? Yeah, that's true. You're right about that part.
So, but the setup of it, I always thought, that tracks to me. I mean, they're way too young, but then so's Obi-Wan. So, it's like, yeah, that's a problem, but it's a continual problem.
Yeah.
Next, I have
Obi-Wan's overhearing Dooku's plan, isn't he?
Yeah, he lands on Geonosis, and we get a very inauspicious introduction for Christopher Lee as the mysterious Count Dooku. Just in the background, surrounded by CGI robots and monsters. And we sort of go into a separatist board meeting.
Right, yeah, exactly.
With which seems like a support group for aliens who all have some kind of annoying tick or habit.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, my name is Wat Tambor, and I can't control the tone of my voice. Hi, Wat.
I do this so that I don't sound like some sort of racist stereotype.
But we're already getting the sense that Christopher Lee is going to be, a smoother, more charismatic villain than we've had so far in any either of the prequel films. And like I said, I think Django is a great henchman. So we've got a a pair of pretty decent adversaries here after a movie where we had a racist alien and like a devil man.
Right. And the devil man wasn't given nearly enough to do.
And they humanize as well, like the humans have human villains, and I think it always works better that way in Star Wars.
Well, also, I don't think we're there yet, but there's a moment for Count Dooku when Obi-Wan is caught.
Mm.
And
spoiler alert, my favorite scene in the film.
Yeah, me too.
By a mile.
I mean, yeah. His acting is so incredible in that moment.
It's just...
You actually think, well, okay, maybe I should be with Count Dooku.
Well, so...
When he's talking about, I really wish Qui-Gon was here so I could talk to my old friend.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Also the scene is, they say, it's two British actors each trying to out-understate the other.
Right.
It reminds me of what Eddie Izzard used to say about the difference between American and British films. American films just, you fuck my wife, you fuck my wife, you fuck my wife. And then British films are just people going into rooms and going, oh, I think I better leave. Yes, I think you better had. And this is definitely the latter.
Yeah, I'm not done yet.
I mean, the way he comes in, and again, we've not really seen him outside of this, outside of being surrounded by computer animated creatures.
Right.
His first kind of human interaction, he comes into the room and immediately is like, my friend, there's been a terrible mistake. And I just like, I'm in from that moment because it's like, I'm like, whatever this ruse is, I think it's great. And I'm
into it.
They've got Obi-Wan awkwardly suspended in midair in some kind of force field. And he's saying, well, I hope it'll be quick. I need to get out of here. And it's just so well done. It feels like, it reminds me, and I think George Lucas might be conscious of this, because I'm sure he's a fan. It reminds me of like Hammer horror movies, where, it's gothic schlock, but there's a lot of polite conversation between people. Like, it's kind of refined, like portraying much darker depths, obviously, but on the surface, this conversation is very civil and polite. And there's won't you all please sit down to dinner? But it also it doesn't ramp up into violence or aggression at all. Like the scene ends exactly as it begins.
That's one of the things I love about it is that, like, he leaves the room with his ruse intact so far as he can tell. And I love that.
His exit line is something like, "It may be difficult to secure your release."
Mm-hmm.
It's like we've gone nowhere, right? But it's so. I mean, it's just it's like real again. Like when you get real acting between good actors in this movie, and there's a scene in Sith, which
that's
I think
the thing, because you realize that's one of the reasons I love the scene so much, is because you have two really good or great actors doing really good work.
Yeah.
And you don't get a lot of that in these movies. And so when it happens, you sort of sit up immediately and you lean in.
And I mean, it's still confusing, right? Because we're not supposed to know at this point that he's with Palpatine. They saved that for the very end of the movie. So
I guess, but there was never a moment where I didn't think he wasn't.
But also
with Palpatine.
But it doesn't make sense, like what game he's playing with Obi-Wan, because does he want Obi-Wan to think he's a separatist, and he's a separatist, so he's left the Jedi, but he's also anti-Sith, because that's what he's telling him.
Mm-hmm.
Is this just to keep Palpatine's identity ultimately secret? Is that so that they leave the movie going,
and we never know,
what we thought about that mysterious Sith Lord? It was just Dooku. It's not. Is that
Yeah,
the
well,
game? I don't get
the
it.
other thing about the Sis is one's always trying to kill the other, and so maybe he's playing that game as well, where
Yeah,
he thinks he's going to get over on Palpatine, and of course Palpatine has other ideas.
yeah. So, so the content of it is confusing, but I think the tone and the style of the scene is kind of
I
perfect.
I wrote down Obi-Wan is captured in floating S&M lightning cuffs.
And he's trying to, it's interesting as well because he's trying to convert Obi-Wan to his cause, and
Yeah.
you know, we they connect. I think it's like almost like the best use of Qui-Gon is after he's dead, dramatically.
Yeah,
Is
right.
in this scene where he says, he basically says Qui-Gon was a bit of a rebel. I think, if he was alive today, he'd
He'd be
sympathize
on
with
our
me
side, yeah.
rather than you. And whenever I hear that, I think, I think as he's established in Phantom Menace, that's probably true.
Well, and because there's that part of it, and then speaking to what you were saying just a minute ago, because he does at least give up the name of Darth Sidious. He does
Hmm.
say this powerful dark lord he's up to some shit.
But he's saying he's claiming that he's his enemy, not his ally.
Yeah, right.
And I don't understand why he's doing that. For like who he's trying. I don't understand who he's trying to fool. The fool or the fool who follows the fool. I don't. I don't like. I
Mm.
don't. It. I don't think. I think when you break it down, and I don't think you should, but I think if you tried to break it down, it wouldn't track at all.
I don't know. I think he's just trying to fool Obi-Wan, but that's the
But
thing about a
to
good
what
lie
end?
usually has some truth in it.
Yeah. But then I'm like, well, does Newt Gunray is he? Does Newt Gunray think Darth Sidious betrayed him or not? Or does he know that people are
Yeah,
going around?
he doesn't seem to know.
I know, but at the end of Sith, he's talking to Palpatine again.
I know.
So is Palpatine like, look, I'm going to be saying these things about how you don't know what's going on, so just pretend you don't know what's going on, okay? It's like, yes, I will
Everything will
see
be
this.
fine.
Yeah, and everything will be fine. Yeah. Oh wait, I forgot to turn off the hologram. Sorry. Anyway, it's all very muddy, and we haven't even mentioned Cypher Diaz and how the hell he plays into this. So, just making the point that I'm not saying this is good writing on that level, but it's good filmmaking in terms of
Hmm.
how the actors are used and how the
Oh
scene is
yeah, I
set
agree.
up. And it's a real highlight for me dramatically
I won't disagree.
in a sort of celebration of all things British in
Yeah.
cinema.
Oh, I have the note of what Padme said. To be angry is to be human. That's what she says after he says, I killed the women and the children. Yeah, to be angry is to be human. You're not going to be human for much longer, but.
That's only an appropriate response if it's like if you're hard of hearing in one ear, and Anakin's like, "Oh, I forgot you can't hear in that ear," and he goes to the other ear and says, "I killed women and children."
Right. That's what you say when maybe you got frustrated with your kids and you raised your voice a little too loud.
I
You
love.
say, "Go to your room."
It's interesting
Yeah,
because
to be angry is to be human.
I get that it. I get that part of the scene that her reaction. There needs to be something on that side as well. There needs to be some sense that alarm bells are ringing.
Yeah, because there isn't. There
There
are
isn't, no, and that's
that's
a
the
real
problem.
that's a real oversight because I could buy that alarm bells are ringing, but she loves him so much she's willing to sort of
Exactly.
to tolerate it because it's just the sand people.
Not even tolerate it, maybe fix it. Like,
Yeah, right.
through love, I can
Like,
make him better.
Yeah, like a kind of domestic abuse situation.
Right, yeah.
On the other side, I really like how it's handled in terms. I really like that they go as far as him admitting like every single shitty thing he did in turn. I really like that. I always really like that moment. That was my big takeaway from my first viewing of the film. That I thought it was a very brave piece of writing, and I really thought from this point onwards, we'd set Vader up, we'd set the transition to Vader up so well but everything they do between then and the actual
now
transition
and the
walks
yeah,
all
right.
of that back and resets it. And I guess Clone Wars makes it even worse because he has to be like a hero for those episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And the strains of, you know, the Vader theme in there.
Sure.
There's a horrible sort of meta moment in the middle of all this where they say there's this droid has a message for you from an Obi-Wan Kenobi. I'm just like,
Yeah.
come on, yeah, it's like we get it, all right? It's another, you know, it's R2 submitting another message for Obi-Wan Kenobi. I understand.
Yeah, we all get it.
Yeah, we all understand. Maybe it was things like that that annoyed the fans. I can understand that.
What do you think of this moment of him in front of her grave, and he says, "I wasn't strong enough to save you"?
About his mother.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean I like that. I think that's you know, again, I feel like that's the trigger moment of where he's like, okay, I'm never going to be weak again, you know?
Mm-hmm. I like the idea.
Like in Better Call Saul, where he's like, you know, it's like very early on where he drives up to Mike and says, you know, we left money on the table. Let's never do that again.
Right.
It's kind of similar. And it's like, there you go. There's the origins of Saul Goodman right there.
Sure.
And while, you know, Padme is distressingly passive in her reaction to Anakin's mass murder, I like the way that she kind of takes control, becomes a bit more Leia-like with taking control of the ship, where she's just like, I'm in charge here. I've decided we're going to go and rescue Obi-Wan.
Mm-hmm.
It's a nice...
You have to follow me.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm going.
And you're sort of like, okay, now I see the family resemblance. Now I see, you know, for the first time I'm seeing how this could be Leia's mother.
Leia's mother, right.
But it comes out organically in the plot because, you know, they've got a choice to make. Do they listen to the Jedis and stay put, or is she gonna pull rank and they go and rescue Obi-Wan? So I like that they're, you know, being rebels.
No, yeah, I like that.
Against the Jedi who are traditionally the heroes, but not in this story. They're definitely the villains of this story.
Oh, they're so terrible. Well, and then that's what they're gonna do. They're gonna go to the planet and start some shit, right?
Well, in between this, something very important happens. Jar Jar condemns the galaxy.
Oh yeah, you're right. I have it right here.
20 years.
I just wrote Palpatine gets his powers thanks to Jar Jar.
Suddenly, Jar Jar's stupidity no longer feels like an asset.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's basically duped into... I would say lightly duped. They don't have to work very hard.
They don't have to work hard at all. No, yeah.
And
do you think that's a bit of a fuck you from Lucas?
Yeah. I think it's the do-over, double-down.
Right, yeah.
Synchronicity. It's sort of like, you know, Jar Jar's going to be the most important
He's not going to
character.
be in this movie very much, but he's going to have one of the most pivotal...
Yeah.
He's going to do one of the most pivotal things in the movie.
I'll make him the villain for you, but then you're going to have to admit and say out loud that Jar Jar is the most important character in this trilogy.
Yeah.
It's like George Lucas fucked you from both sides, you know?
Right.
I mean, I think it's hilarious. It always makes me laugh because it is such a meta choice in that sense.
Plus, just watching him
could
think.
Have been anyone. Yeah.
Watching Jar Jar think
Mm-hmm.
is always kind of deliciously terrible.
You need that Homer Simpson brain.
Yeah, exactly. Because
you need the cartoon cows in there, you know, playing fiddles.
Because I guess
what am I saying? He's already a cartoon cow. Why would there?
Yeah. Well, the genius of it is that as Palpatine is talking, and they're just showing Jar Jar and Jar Jar's thinking, in your mind you start going, Misa can help the Palpatine.
Yeah.
You start speaking as his thoughts in your own mind.
I gotta say,
it's such a great fuck you that George put together there.
I would love it if the one instance of interior monologue in the entire Star Wars Skywalker Saga
Canon.
is Jar Jar Binks going, "Me's are gonna help Palpatine." Like the one time it becomes like David Lynch's Dune is for
Yeah.
that sole reason. That'd be great.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And then, you know, Ian McDermott has a great moment when he accepts the, what do they call it? The it's martial law, essentially.
Emergency powers.
Emergency powers, that's it. And I love democracy.
Yeah.
It's just, again, it's just a...
I love the, I promise to give these powers back as soon as it's possible, or whatever he says.
I think he saw what Christopher Lee and Ewan McGregor were doing in that scene, and they were like, "No, I'm gonna out understate them. Okay, I'm the most British person in this film."
That's
because
great.
It's so it's just, you know, we know how disingenuous it is, but you know, you get a sense that you would buy it. Right, you would sort of buy it as real emotion if you didn't know.
Yeah, this next scene is it's the it's the set piece before the set piece, and it's my least favorite part of the movie.
You're talking about the droid factory.
Yeah,
it's my least favorite part of the movie as well, and I don't think
it's a train wreck.
I don't think you'd be surprised to learn that it's a reshoot.
That is not surprising.
It was a complete add-on. They felt they were missing some action.
They weren't.
They weren't. No. And you know what? The most ironic part of it is when they released this movie, they had an IMAX version, and at the time, IMAX movies couldn't be over 2 hours, so they had to cut like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes out of the movie, and one of the scenes that went was the droid factory, and everyone who saw that, you know, is generally far more favorable towards the movie, and they only cut like 10 or so minutes out of it, and most of it was the droid factory. So the reason I don't hold it against the movie is that whenever I watch it, and even before I knew, it's so clearly a reshot scene. Like it's like, oh, we're missing something here in the pacing, you know, the studio note or something.
Right, yeah.
And I have a soft spot for it because of Droid Tales, the Lego Star Wars Droid Tales, which, by the way, if you've not seen and you're in any way interested in Star Wars or the prequels, my God, it's essential viewing, because it's the Skywalker saga as retold by through C-3PO's memory of what happened.
Okay.
And it begins at the end of Return of the Jedi.
I lost an arm. I got blown to pieces. I got my eye torn out.
But but for this scene, when we get at the droid factory scene, it turns into a early 90s 32-bit video game done entirely in profile with pixelated graphics and like a flying R2 picking up coins as it goes past.
That's funny you say that, because one of the things that I didn't really realize it until maybe this viewing, but one of the things that just drives me nuts is I didn't realize how much I never wanted to see CGI C-3PO or R2-D2 until I watched this scene.
Yeah.
It feels so terribly out of place
R2
to watch
flying...
C-3PO, you know, bouncing around and hanging on by the skin of his teeth.
Well,
off of different ledges and shit.
To me, it's, I mean, you know, all the one-liners are really weak.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I hold against it more. And actually, I would leave in R2 flying with the rockets. I like that moment. I think it's a nice sort of kind of
addition.
Reveal. Yeah, I think it's I think you could have kept that in and just still gone more or less straight into the monster movie part of the film.
Okay, fine.
Because you could have.
I have to admit, it's the C-3PO that bothers me more than the R2.
Yeah, I've never had an issue with, you know, they fly now, except that again, I'm a little frustrated that we can't entirely blame J.J. Abrams for they fly now, because it started with this.
Right.
I mean, and it, as we've seen this, we've been tracking this. The number of times that sequel's idea of upping the ante is to make a character fly when they couldn't fly before.
Sure.
And it does reek of sequel desperation for sure.
Yeah.
Adding flight to the skills of the characters.
I put poor Natalie Portman dodging CGI presses.
Yeah. It's it was an egregious reshoot for gamer audiences, right?
Maybe, yeah.
And the only reason that it makes me chuckle is because I'm thinking of the Droid Tales version where they actually turn it into a video game, and it's very very funny.
That's
and it
good.
all makes complete sense, and it's Star Wars having laughing at its own
fun of itself. Yeah.
Yeah, making fun of itself, which only really Lego Star Wars has been able to do.
Mm-hmm.
I always felt there was more to learn about R2D2. Who's to say? We find he gets we see a new thing come out of him every movie. What's wrong with rockets? And then over time the rockets fail. Sure, I buy it.
I'd like to see them point instead of down, point out, and then missiles come out of them as well.
So now that he flies, he has to do everything.
Yeah.
Now that he flies, he has to be able to brew coffee and all kinds of make a cake. Maybe that's why the pancake flipping droid was
so pissed.
Was so pissed with him. He was like, he knows he can make a better omelet than him.
I know what you can do. Get the fuck out of here. This is my job.
I'm specifically designed for flipping pancakes.
Yeah. Oh, another thing that bothers me, because then they get captured and Padme confesses her love.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's the romance novella part of the movie, isn't it?
There's never a time I ever see that moment and think, why? Why would you love that man?
Sure. Well, yeah. There should be some accounting for that, but she is in love with him.
He's been such a piece of shit.
Yeah, we know she's fallen in love with him.
Yeah, I mean, floating pairs.
I like the way that after they kiss, they go out into the arena. It reminds me of a scene from Spartacus, or if you don't like taste in your films, Gladiator.
Now that we can agree on. I thought I was the only one.
For those of you who don't like quality filmmaking, Gladiator. Or The Robe, or any of those Hollywood epics, that's definitely a part of the aesthetic of the scenes that are coming up.
Well, I think it's deliberate, harking back.
Very much. And what a couple of years it was for Christopher Lee, standing on CGI podiums with monsters.
Yeah, I know, right?
Because Lord of the Rings was made exactly the same time. I know he's a big Lord of the Rings fan, but even he must have had some cognitive dissonance as to which story he was in.
Who am I today?
He's doing exactly the same thing. He's addressing monsters from a podium.
What was that quote that you said Patrick Stewart had about?
Oh, yeah.
Energize. No, that's not what we say here.
Yes. He said, engage. No, we don't say that in this room, do we? In this room, we say energize. Yes. That's a great blooper.
I just would love to see him in his full Lord of the Rings getup and saying, I wish Qui-Gon were here now. It's like, I'm sorry, Christopher. Oh, shit. Sorry about that. Sorry.
Every time I think of him as Saruman, is that the name of the?
Yeah.
I think of the behind the scenes clip of Peter Jackson talking about how Christopher Lee gave him stabbing notes. So he tried to when at some point some character, I don't really know the movies well enough to say which one, gets stabbed in the back. And Peter Jackson had him do the character do a full Hollywood, the kind of what happens when you stab a character in a Hollywood movie. And Christopher Lee, of course, who'd been involved with wartime espionage and
right,
had actually stabbed people and probably been stabbed too, was just like, that's not what happens when you get stabbed.
Yeah.
The air just goes right out of your body. So that's why in the movie
You can't say
change it.
anything.
There's like no sound, no sound comes out of this, and it's all down to Christopher Lee because he was like, no, that's not how you stab someone.
Yeah, exactly. You learned that from Turner and Hooch.
I think Peter Jackson said Christopher Lee came to me and said, "Do you know what happens when a person is stabbed?" I'm just like, no, Christopher, please tell me.
I, I'm, I, I'm worried right now, but I
Yeah.
have to ask the question. No, what happens? I tell you what. Why don't we take a break? Because we're getting to the big set piece.
We've had the the trailer for the.
Yeah, we've had
Yeah,
the
why
mini
the hell
trailer
did they think
set
there
piece.
wasn't enough action?
I don't know.
Then the rest
So
of the movie
stupid.
is pure action.
Yeah. We would have gotten to it sooner.
I know.
Does the coronavirus have you feeling oogie? Have you been sitting on your couch for weeks? Nay, have you been sitting on there for months? Well, it's time for you to get back in shape. Check out 2AT Fitness. You can find them on Instagram. You can find them on Facebook. 2AT Fitness was started by Tina Bernard. She is ready and raring to go to help you get back into the shape you want to get into. They've got all kinds of classes. They've got outdoor in-person classes. They've got online classes if that's what you prefer. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get back in shape. You're going to find a variety of exercises. You're going to have strength training, cardio, weightlifting, even fun 5-minute burnouts that will push you to your limits. So get off the couch, get into shape. Go ahead and check out 2AT Fitness. Tina Bernard has got you for all your needs. I know her personally. She's fantastic. You're not going to meet a better person to help you become the new you. Check it out. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here finishing up with Attack of the Clones. All right.
And we're getting to the part of the movie where the clones attack.
Finally.
But
The
they're only
title
attacking
seems
in
to me
defense.
to imply that it would be attacking the good guys, though.
Well, it depends. Again, depends on your definition of clones. It's an Obi-Wan certain point of view situation, right? Because
Right.
They're called the Clone Wars because it's robots versus genetic clones.
Other robots.
guess.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
I don't know. Maybe this is a bits of Jabba flying off the sail barge. Because I've never substantiated this. I've only ever said it to myself in my own head.
Yeah.
But I always assumed it's the Clone Wars because both sides are essentially some form of cloned either technology or biology.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you.
Me and George Lucas were on the same wavelength. I think that's what I'm learning.
But in this one, they're attacking mostly bugs.
Mostly bugs. Yeah, well, it's like I said, the story of the prequels is unnecessary flying creatures, right? And the scene is, though I love this scene, it is full of them. I mean, there's the bugs hiding in the walls. I love that moment, and I also think that it's such a shame that it descends into a scene like the Droid Factory because I love the moment when they come out of the cave.
It's real aliens.
Yeah, exactly, like kind of horror, and that would also set up the monster movie set piece that we're about to get much better.
Yeah, that you're getting to.
Than having a Super Mario Brothers.
I gotta say something about this final battle scene, and obviously.
I hope so. We got nothing else to talk about.
Yeah, yeah. But I just want to talk about it in juxtaposition with Sith because. Nothing has ever really bothered me more in a Star Wars movie, I think, than watching in the next film poor Ewan McGregor riding some long-necked beast like a horse.
Yeah.
Everything about it just reads poor choice to me. And yet you're seeing similar creatures in this battle scene, but they all work better to me.
Yeah. It's so clear that it's meant to be a celebration of cinematic creature design, right? I mean, there's nods to Ray Harryhausen, there's nods to the Dinosaur B movies.
Yeah.
One of them looks just like a critter, So there's even more kind
Yeah,
of
right.
modern monster movie references. I'm
Mhm.
surprised we didn't get a Gremlin or something like that at some point. But it's like Enter the Monsters, and in this arena, in this
Well, that's the
CGI
thing.
bug world, it
Yeah,
sort of all it makes, you're right, it makes sense in context. Whereas what in the next movie, it seems like the creatures trivialize what's going on,
right, yeah.
and this has got worse as the more we've learned about Obi-Wan, because in the Obi-Wan TV series, at one point, the Inquisitor, who turns out to be one of the kids who was slaughtered at the
Mm-hmm.
Jedi, who wasn't slaughtered,
Well,
but
yeah,
witnessed the
who
slaughter,
survived the slaughter.
who survived it at the Jedi Temple during Order 66, says to him, where were you at that time? And someone did a great meme on social media, which was just like the next frame was Obi-Wan on that lizard thing. Because that was literally what he was doing. So it doesn't look good, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. I was being a buckaroo.
Whereas, there are kind of high stakes here.
There are kind of high
Especially
stakes.
as the scene goes on.
Yeah.
Especially as the scene goes on and it becomes clear that this is going to be the first battle in a war, essentially.
Yeah. And what I find interesting is that this is usually when I'm the most frustrated with George Lucas and prequels, when almost everything you're watching is not real.
Yeah.
So they're not, in a real arena. There's not real rocks. There's not real pillars. There's not real bugs.
Yeah.
There's not real creatures.
The only thing that's real is the amount of skin that you can see on
Natalie Portman. Yeah, exactly. But it's not like this is done way better than anything or everything else. It's not like the CGI looks better, but for whatever reason, something gels within it in which I buy it a little bit more, or it doesn't rub me as wrong as most other things might. I don't know. So there's just there's something interesting within it where I normally I would not give the end of this movie a break, and I do.
I think you've already given the reason is that it's everything is unreal.
Uh-huh.
And that unreality is heightened to the nth degree.
Right. Yeah, that's part of it.
I mean, there's sort of nothing, like it's this the monster part of this scene is just all vicarious pleasure, right? It's the perfect excuse for excessive and brutal violence going under the radar in a kids film.
Mm-hmm.
Because the stuff that's happening, it's like extreme violence that's happening on screen, but because it's monsters and it's fantasy and nothing's real, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate that. And schlock is the only goal here. Like, it's not aiming for anything higher.
You really
than
think
that.
he's going for schlock though? Because I think it's schlocky, but.
Oh yeah, I think again. I think it's.
In my mind, I always picture Lucas believing he's creating high art.
Not in this moment, and I think what I like about this movie is I think he lets go of that.
Mm.
And again, it's just like, whatever he can wedge in that's like Pulp Fiction, the Pulp Fiction of his childhood.
Now, you keep saying Pulp Fiction. I want you to know that some people are thinking about John Travolta and Bruce Willis.
Or, yeah. So, popular genre fiction is another way of putting it, and monster movies, film noir, romance novellas, the traditionally derided popular culture.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it all fit on that level. It all fits together to me, and then this scene is a love letter, a celebration to, monster movies from King Kong to
I hope so,
Son of Sinbad.
Well, and I to your point, I think you said earlier, it reminds me of Hammer horror kind of stuff,
absolutely.
And I that part of it I really like.
Mm-hmm. And you got Christopher Lee up there as the ringmaster. So
right.
I think that's totally deliberate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're gonna, your villain is Dracula and Frankenstein and the Mummy.
Right.
And he's the guy, he's the ringmaster in an arena full of monsters.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it's so clear to me that this is all just about fun schlocky adventure. I don't understand why people would resist that low-hanging fruit and just enjoy themselves.
And just go with the flow.
I mean, all the stuff, like, it's taming, like the taming the beast
I know,
thing.
yeah.
It's like straight out of the kind of 60s Greek epic adaptations that Ray Harryhausen did the stop motion monsters for. It's like another, it's like the Rancor scene in Jedi. It's another hero's trial moment. It's trying to give Anakin the equivalent sort of hero making moment.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though it's just like he's got to do this so the three of them survive, and if they all died, nothing would really change. But it feels like it's higher stakes because, again, it's got that sense of like he's the hero, has to overcome these challenges.
Right.
And also he fell off that steroid horse earlier on, so he's got something to prove in front of Padme.
Yeah,
to reclaim his manhood,
I mean,
mind you, I think, is she more embarrassed that he fell off the steroid horse or that he killed all those women and children? Probably the steroid horse, right?
Based on how George focuses his attention, yeah. I like that moment when he has her jump down and they kiss. Onto the horse. It's so amazingly stupid.
So amazingly stupid. And also, the midriff exposure, they are like, again, sort of trying to work in the excuse of a monster, like biting it off.
Right.
Of all things, like.
It also
plausible deniability for George.
That's what I was gonna say. I thought, in my mind, I think there's a portion of the plausible deniability for George Lucas where he says, "Well, she's not in a bikini. Everybody was upset about that, so it's just it got torn off. I mean, it's a dangerous moment.
That is exactly what he's.
But we all know what it's there for.
Yeah, we do. Also, because it's like, I forgot as well that it starts off as a perfectly appropriate outfit and then becomes like a too sexy outfit through monster ravaging. If that was just the outfit, I think it'd be a different discussion. You'd just be like, is it appropriate to dress her that way? Not really, but
I'm gonna have a subset of my wardrobe.
It's this is kind of how women dress in fantasy stuff, and that's okay. But the fact that it's part of the plot that her clothes are ripped off her, that's, I mean, again, very much in the spirit of the genre. The fur, Raquel Welch's fur bikini and
Barbarella
BC. Yeah, exactly. It's not something that necessarily
Zardoz.
It's not something that a modern day movie needs to worry too much about reviving.
Yeah, right.
In terms of the pleasures of the genre, we can move past certain things when they're just deeply sexist.
Mm-hmm.
But and maybe she was being held hostage. Maybe she had a gun to her head. But Natalie Portman really liked the ability to do action while dressing sexily. She talked about how she liked that dynamic in the making of stuff. She said she likes the fact that I can dress like a woman but still be in charge of a mission.
Yeah.
So
I'll
take that at face value. I mean,
right.
It's an official Lucasfilm production, but it doesn't seem like they're making anyone say anything they don't want to say.
That they don't want to do or say, yeah. And in addition, I kind of like that moment where Hayden Christensen's saying, well, what about Padme? And Obi-Wan just sort of offhandedly says, she looks like she's fine.
Yeah, she's on top of things.
She's on top of things.
And then the Jedi arrive.
I know.
We see Mace Windu
slowly walk up.
which he also campaigned for.
Mm-hmm.
This was George didn't want to give him. George said, "There's a clip of him saying, you'll either get red or you'll get. Oh no, you'll either get green or you get blue. That's it." And Sam Jackson's like, "That's
Man,
it, green or
purple.
blue." And he said, "Maybe you'll get purple." And that's how it came about.
That's
he had
great.
to campaign for it.
This party's over.
Yeah, I think I see Ahsoka in this crowd. You know, as we said when we discussed the clone
I'd have
Wars
to go
from the
back
watch
and
film.
look. I don't remember.
Yeah, I think.
But
I
I
see
do have
Ahsoka.
the feeling maybe it's just the actors maybe not being completely up to portion. I see some Jedi in some parts of these fights where I'm thinking to myself, man, they scraped the bottom of the Jedi barrel for these Jedi. They seem to be struggling with the.
Well, we know from the opening crawl they have resource problems, and this
That's
is
true.
This is those resource problems in evidence, right?
Yeah.
We've got like third, fourth tier Jedi's here. We've got the Naval Reserve Jedi's, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got the Jedi, like the Naval Reserve from the Last Detail of the Robert Town movie here. I am the fucking Shore Patrol. What a great movie that is. One of the greatest movies of the 70s.
Good shit.
I get a real kick out of seeing Jedis on this scale fighting. I feel like this is where we should have started in Phantom Menace.
Mm.
Like, I appreciate that they built up to this, but, I didn't need a whole movie of them sitting in lounges.
Yeah, I'll say. Yeah.
I wanted them to be sort of this is how I imagined we'd encounter the Jedi for the first time,
Right.
in a battle scenario on a big scale.
Remote planet.
Yeah. So it feels kind of both unprecedented. It's upping the ante. Obviously, it's more Jedi than we've ever seen before in one place.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it works. I think it's exactly the kick that this trilogy needs to take it to another level.
Yeah, but it's like we never go back to it.
Well, I mean, again, this is the problem.
You get your one shot and done.
Yeah, this is definitely the peak of it.
Right.
They're all, as we can see from the number of Zoom meetings there are in the next film, all the Jedi are spread across the galaxy. So they all so this is like, it's like but it reminds me of like the Muppet movie where you see all the Muppets on screen for the first time, and it's like, like we never got this in the Muppet Show. It was never, you could never have two Muppets at a time. Now you can see them all in one shot, and that's how it feels for me. And obviously the C-3PO, C-3PO is now a Jar Jar surrogate, right? For the purposes of this scene.
Yeah, you're right.
And everything's awful. You could cut out everything involving C-3PO in this scene. And
of course,
it would be better. At least it's inessential to what's going on. Unlike Jar Jar, who was in charge of one of the main battles.
Just fucking shit up.
He's not Captain. He's not General C-3PO of the.
Mm-hmm.
Although I guess when he gets into the droid army, he kind of is. But anyway, it's all very badly done. That part of it. I like that. This is sort of a apology for how Boba Fett dies, in quotations, in Return of the Jedi here. That Django sort of dies because he's outclassed by a better warrior.
Sure.
As opposed to his rocket going up because slapstick.
Mm-hmm.
It's a better send off for effect.
It's a better send off. There's always a part of me that wants his head to roll out of that helmet, though. Make it show it as terrible as it really is.
But that's it. That's what you can't do in this kind of movie, and that's why the monsters are such a genius move, because you can do what you fucking want when it's CGI monsters.
Right.
They can be like drawing as much blood as necessary,
mm-hmm.
but you can't do it with like real human heads.
I guess not.
And they're still like they're again the George Lucas refuses to admit that a joke is not working. We go back to the negotiations bit.
I know,
Negotiations takes like he refuses. It's like, this wasn't funny the first time. It's definitely not funny now, George. the other thing that's really bad about C-3PO shtick is doesn't feel like C-3PO.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's accidentally making a lot of puns, which is not something I associate with C-3PO.
Right.
Like
Actually,
yeah.
now that you say that, C-3PO doesn't feel very C-3PO throughout this entire trilogy.
No. And
it's
maybe,
like they're missing the essential part of C-3PO, you know?
We'll find out next year, but maybe some of the sequels, Disney sequels, actually do a better job with the character of C-3PO. Maybe. Not. It's a possibility. This is it's a low bar.
I like this moment though, where Dooku stops the fight and
I've got here that
asks them to surrender.
Lee's voice and words totally carry the scene.
Yeah,
it's like it just adds a touch of class.
It does, doesn't it? Really,
it's a great palate cleanser.
Yeah,
we've had action. We're about to go into another action scene. Essentially.
Yeah, right. We have three set pieces back to back to back.
Monster action into military action. So we need this palate cleanser in the middle. And also, It's pretty much exactly what I remember he does in Lord of the Rings when he's addressing the orcs.
Yeah,
he did the same thing. Where like,
something similar.
All right. Everyone settle down.
Now go off and kill people.
And then, the stormtroopers are our heroic cavalry.
Show up with Yoda.
If that's not an inversion, I don't know what is. They're like, yay, the cavalry are here, and
that's the definition of an inversion.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much dramatic irony going on here. Yoda is in charge of the stormtroopers. They're the heroes.
We're supposed to hate
save
them.
The day. Yeah. We get Boba holding up his dad's head.
Yeah.
Is this where you wanted the head to fall out? Because I think that would be unintentionally comic if it did.
No, I have to admit, I had both thoughts.
It just slops out.
When you have that close up of it rolling, I thought it would be great if it was just like.
Yeah.
And then when he picked it up, I thought, fall out.
Maybe it's anticipating Lego Star Wars, and you can never get the head out of the helmet.
Yeah.
You always have to use your teeth to get it out. And then you fuck up the edge of the Lego head, and it never fits on a body ever.
I know, right?
I mean, people for some reason are offended by this image of Boba holding up his dad's head and swearing revenge, essentially, right? I mean, that's the implication. It's like, it's not like they linger on it for a long time, or it's that important, right? It's just,
yeah. I mean,
again, they're just sort of connecting the dots in a not very interesting way, but
sure, right, yeah. But as Lucas tends to do.
It doesn't offend me. Yeah, it doesn't bother me.
But it doesn't offend me. No.
No.
People are triggered on behalf of Boba.
Yeah. And people have commented, and I think this is legitimate, that it doesn't really make sense that the Jedis wouldn't have suspicions about the origins of these stormtroopers and how they came into.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And why they would just be happy.
It's just so strange that the Jedi are dumb enough to say.
Is behind this.
Yeah, the Jedi are dumb enough to say, "Oh, so there's some troopers for us?
Yeah,
great. We could use some troopers."
So it's kind of, I don't know if it's just like, I can never figure out when I watch this back, like whether this was what Lucas planned the whole time, or whether he just had kind of written himself into a corner and this was the only way to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no mention of, like, obviously Yoda is uncomfortable with the idea of war and the Jedi being soldiers, when there's no sense that they have any suspicions.
Exactly.
That that their enemies have created these stormtroopers, and
right.
There's likely to be some kind of, they're likely to be working against them.
I'd like one person to say, let's check out any of the background code.
Hmm.
You know, with well, I guess it's not computer, but you know, maybe within the DNA.
Well, I mean, we're meant to think Yoda's gone to Kamino, and then he said, like, what has he said to the interdimensional beings?
Yeah, we don't get that scene.
It's like, did
so
he
these
go,
are for us, right?
Yeah, did he go? I'm here to pick up I'm here to pick up my clones,
Mm-hmm.
or did he feel them out? And he was like, okay, I buy that Cypher Diaz thought we might need them. So he created this in advance, and I guess now we need them. I guess he was.
You don't
right.
ever
I
really
don't
get
know. Any of this would help.
You don't ever really get a sense because Obi-Wan Kenobi just says that he died 10 years ago. We don't get a sense of how he died or if he had been up to some shenanigans or any. You know what I mean? Like, was he in favor or out of favor with the Jedis or anything like that? Right? You don't get that kind of information.
I think he wasn't he? I mean, I know what actually happened is that they had him as a character and then wrote him out and then decided they could use him as a kind of a plot device. But yeah, I just assumed that he was a stooge in all this and that they killed him when they were done with him.
Okay.
But I might be thinking of The Fugitive. How that turns out.
Well, Dooku is gonna, go into his little room and get the Death Star plans and take off on his speeder.
I want to point out we get a new both a new droid and a new walker in this scene. And typical of these prequels, it's got spider legs.
Yeah, right.
It looks like something from War of the Worlds, but not necessarily the H.G. Wells version or any of the movie versions, but the Thin Lizzy musical. Have you ever heard that?
No.
The double album,
Mm-mm.
the musical version narrated by Richard Burton.
No.
Well worth your time.
Okay.
And the illustrations on the cover look just like the big tripod droids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So like new Walker, who dis? And we also see and we get a little bit of Nute Gunray, don't we? Like he's still
a little, yeah. Does he get killed? Does Dooku kill him?
He's still got the racist accent. Not yet. No, he doesn't get killed until the end of Sith.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
But he's still got the racist accent.
He does, yeah.
So again, do over, double down. He's kind of in the background, but still very, very much.
You don't have to hear him a lot, but when you do, he'll still be a racist stereotype.
Again, I think George Lucas thinks it's all right, like to bring back an unpopular character as long as everyone else in the movie interrupts them. Because Dooku is like, no, let it go.
Shut up, please. Shut your dirty pie hole.
Nope, too racist.
I always laugh when Dooku gets on that speeder and speeds away.
I know, there's something about it that
it is unintentionally funny.
I think, you know what I think it is? I think he's far too elegant for something.
That might be it. You're right. That might be it, yeah.
He looks very regal on that scooter,
yeah.
and it is not a regal scooter.
Exactly.
He needs to be on one of those mod bikes from Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
But before he escapes, we see him smuggling out the Death Star designs.
Yeah, right.
So they got, I don't know what he's called, Mr. Click, who's he's like a character from A Bug's Life, sort of. Yeah, he's Kevin Spacey from A Bug's Life, but old. He has the name of a walking stick. Anyway, it's not worth getting into. But this was gilding the lily here. Their designs, even though it's at the design stage, this is far too soon in the timeline for them even to be considering this.
See, I don't know. I always wonder, because they have a lot of resources. I'll admit it. But even from Star Wars to Jedi, I think, yeah, the Emperor's pissed, but man, it seems like they've done a lot of work in a short period of time.
But that's what doesn't make sense here. It's like, what was like...
But to me, it always...
20 years to build the first one, 25 years to build the first one, and then 6 months to build the second one.
The second one, yeah, exactly. And so it seems like the 25 years would be more accurate.
We go back to your, bits of Jabba type theory that, they were building one before that and we just
That's
didn't know
right.
about it. But I think it forced the hand of Rogue One to explain why it took so long to build it after 20 years, because when
Mm-hmm.
Space Ben Mendelsohn arrives at Galen Erso's shack at the beginning of the film, he's like you're the only one who can build this. We don't know how to take it any further. So the idea is it's like, it's just sitting there as scaffolding for like 10 years or something.
Right.
Before Galen Erso gets on it, and then of course he puts in the MacGuffin.
The exhaust port.
That's right, yeah. That was never there until it was. So I feel like that, again, you could have cut this and it would have saved it. It's bad enough that it appears at the end of Sith, I think, because it looks very far along at that point.
Yeah, right.
But definitely here. I mean, the Clone Wars haven't even started yet.
Except for this one battle, if you count it.
This is the beginning of. I don't know. Yoda hasn't done the official opening ceremony yet. That happens at the. We get the Clone Wars opening ceremony at the end of the. Directed by Danny Boyle. And again, sort of flack that this movie and this part of the movie gets is that these battle scenes are overly busy, but I think there's only a couple of shots where it's so excessive it's actively hard to watch. The rest of it I think is okay.
Yeah, I kind of fall in between. There are moments where it is busy. There are moments where it looks fine, but for the most part, I find myself not engaged.
Mm-hmm. I understand that. I think I remember seeing like an honest trailers for this movie, and that they picked the the 2-second shot where it's just visually insane what's going on. There's so much going on, and I'm like, yeah, but it is really just a few seconds every few minutes. It's not the whole sequence. And it's not representative, I don't think.
All right, fine.
But they shouldn't have let let it get to that point, but at least they pull back from it periodically.
I guess to me, the problem with it is that it always, it feels like you're trying to create a set piece after your set piece.
But but if you take out the droid,
you've had your big ending.
I think it's.
But I realize it's like we have to get to the saber fight. But even that's not going to be,
I was about to argue that it's like, no, it still feels like part of the same sequence, but when you add in the two lightsaber duels that are about to follow, I'm like, that is a hat on a hat on a hat.
Exactly. Yeah.
I can't argue against that. No. I just forgot that. I always forget. I just like I always feel like the stormtrooper thing is gonna lead into the end of the movie, and then I go, oh no, we've got to have like two
we have about 15 minutes of nonsense left, including sword fights.
And again, like Jedi not learning their lesson, a Jedi master and his apprentice going after a Sith Lord.
Yep.
It's like, did you learn nothing from Phantom Menace? What do you think of this whole Obi-Wan letting Padme die setup?
Intellectually,
I like that he chooses to let her die. I don't think it makes sense in terms of the next movie, but
yeah,
since he will literally become a fascist ruler of the galaxy so that she will live. It seems that at this point, again, unless it's another like I'll never make that mistake again,
right,
kind of moment, but it's not. It just feels like. Again, it's like the Jedi at Dix. They're always going to make you choose between the thing that you want.
But I guess for me, it always falls a little flat because there's never a moment where I think, well, she landed on soft sand. She's going to be fine.
You landed on soft sand. Why are we in another sand-based planet anyway? I thought this was like a rock planet.
Yeah.
Did they accidentally forget they weren't on Tatooine?
They just made it red.
They're just like, I've forgotten where we are in the movie. I'm just going to guess and say Tatooine.
Right.
75% of the time I'll be correct.
But speaking to what you were saying earlier, to me, it's one of these things where they try to bring drama to a moment where,
Yeah.
there's not enough in that inciting incident to, make it as dramatic as I think he wants it to be. And yet,
Yeah. But it's also, it just doesn't, like, his choice. I mean, obviously they've got to get him to the Dooku fight,
yeah, right.
but or there should have at least been some sense of that he has great resentment that he had to make that choice.
Right, exactly.
And that it's all that kind of resentment is bubbling up, and
Mm-hmm.
I just wish that they threaded the needle a little more on Anakin's,
But again,
like decaying psychological state.
Yeah, part of I think what's going on here is Lucas wants moments. He's obviously he's building towards something, and we know that that's Vader. But it's this movie's own fault that the story, Lucas chooses to separate Obi-Wan and Anakin.
That's what you do in the second movie in the trilogy in the Star Wars film.
Always, yeah, right.
Even in Last Jedi, it's the same thing.
But if they were, if they were together, and the kind of back and forth that they're having at the beginning of the movie, and you could lay more breadcrumbs towards this moment.
That's true. But at this point, I think
in a way that I think would be more meaningful.
And at this point, I think he just represents Jedi douchery. The kind of Jedi douchery that Anakin will eventually pin on Obi-Wan.
Yeah, right.
I mean, with good reason, but Windu and Yoda are far more culpable than Obi-Wan is.
Yeah.
For his making him repress all his emotions.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then it's kind of anticlimactic. This Dooku. It's funny too because it's only obligatory so that we can get to Yoda.
Yeah.
So it has to be over quickly.
Well, I only just thought of this, but it's like again the sort of feeling that you need to have a trailer for your set piece as well as the actual set piece.
Right.
Like
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The droid factory leads into the monster scene. Mm-hmm. The monster scene is the trailer for is the teaser for
the chase.
For the chase, and then the chase is the sort of the
and
we've got
to the fight
lightsaber duels back to back, and certainly, I mean, Duel of the Fates. The beats are the same, but done more fluently and done as one coherent set piece that has a start point, an end point, and a middle. Here it feels more muddy. It's certainly like
for sure.
It feels like it's like we go fast, then we go slow, then we go fast, and then we go slow, and it's like
and also the one thing that the original trilogy does so well is the idea of a young Jedi versus a master Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
But Luke's not helpless. The Force is strong with him. He's
had 10 minutes of training.
Yeah, exactly. And he does well.
Scary cave.
Even in Empire, that is a great lightsaber fight.
It's a real yeoman's effort from Luke.
Yeah, exactly. And so the idea that two Jedi, even though they're not working as a team, and that's it's because of George Lucas insists on Anakin's hot-headedness as the reason why Dooku can dispatch with them so quickly. But based on what I've seen in other Star Wars movies, Obi-Wan especially, and even Anakin, they should be more capable even against Dooku. But it's all wiped clean because we just have to get to Yoda. So in that way, it's muddy.
Yeah, I like, so a couple of things that I do like. I like that it's scaled down from the Phantom Menace. I think that they're not trying to beat the Phantom Menace at its own game, right? Mm-hmm. They're sort of saying that sequence was what it was. This is going to be more sort of character-based, storytelling kind of based action rather than just sort of full-on martial arts display.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that.
I think you could have still all done all of what he wanted to do and made it more interesting, though. I think they could have
yeah.
attacked together. I think it could have lasted maybe 3 or 4 minutes longer.
Oh, wow. Don't hear that often about this movie.
I know, especially if you cut out the droid factory scene. But, you know, if you do that, you would still have those essential elements of a
I hate
lightsaber
that
fight
restaurant,
in,
the
in
Droid
a
Factory. That
Star
menu is
Wars
so
movie and still get to Yoda. Because the Yoda part is truly fun to watch.
Okay, I'm glad I didn't know how you felt about it. I feel the same, unsurprisingly. I like Teenage Mutant Ninja Yoda.
Yeah.
I think also that sort of, again, like, everything's happening either too quickly or not quickly enough, because, like, Obi-Wan gets his ass handed to him, and it was only like 10 years
so
ago
quickly, right?
that he was like, this is how I expect Alec Guinness's Obi-Wan to be dispatched, not
Yeah, right.
Ewan McGregor, who is still a young man,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the way that they sort of accelerate, I don't know. None of it makes
doesn't
sense.
sit well with me.
It doesn't, like, you know, and they've never
I don't
figured
even
out...
think Anakin should be dispatched as quickly as Obi-Wan is.
No. And with the Obi-Wan aging thing, I mean, it's like, I guess they were counting on Ewan McGregor aging more rapidly than he did.
Yeah,
In the 20 years since he did this. That's a kind of a, you know, that's provided a bit of a narrative problem. But still, they're all over the place. You know, by the next movie, he's basically the Obi-Wan that we see at the beginning of New Hope.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, and then 10 years later, he's gone back to how he looks here. So they've never figured out how to successfully age the character over the passage of time.
Mm-hmm.
And what they've done since the prequels in terms of spin-offs has just made it far, far worse.
Sure.
But, you know, even if he was aging like a normal human, Ewan McGregor still wouldn't have caught up with Alec Guinness after a 20-year gap. I'll preface what I have to say about the Teenage Mutant Ninja Yoda, which I do like. Probably, you know, I know it's a divisive issue in Star Wars fandom. I would have loved if he stayed true to what Lucas said originally, that all his Force talents are motion based, right? That he doesn't. I would have been really happy if they just, you know, if George Lucas stuck to his guns and said, you know, Yoda doesn't have a lightsaber. He doesn't use a lightsaber. His command of the Force is manifest differently. But given that we've gone through it, I think it's fun and cool, and
yeah,
I like seeing this little.
See, I feel two different ways about it, because you know, the all the nonsense they do before they get to lightsabers. You know, I get it intellectually, and I just think it's boring to watch them float things at each other and swish them away.
Like Fruit Ninja.
Yeah, exactly. The lightning part is more interesting to me, because I like the idea of Yoda just kind of catching it within his hands and
it could have stayed that,
shuffling
right?
it off.
Just been
and it could have stayed with that, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's what Lucas originally said about Yoda, that all the Jedi have, not all Jedi. Well, I suppose that we've blown that already, because every Jedi we've seen in the past 10 minutes of the film has had a lightsaber. So I guess it's clear where we're going with this. They've also mentioned Yoda's swordsmanship in an offhand comment during the car chase.
Yeah, right.
So the spinning, jumping Yoda, I like on the level of, you know, a callback to "Judge Me by My Size, Do You?"
Yeah, right.
From Empire Strikes Back, and I think this is I like it as a statement of, it doesn't matter that he's this small frog.
Right. Yeah.
He can kick ass with the best of them.
Yeah, exactly.
But once it gets going, it sort of has that Droid Factory problem of feeling just very video game, like the way he's spinning and jumping, like someone is operating him with a joystick.
Sure.
The stuff I like, stuff I don't like, but I'm not opposed to it at all.
Mm-hmm.
In the way some people are. I like that it's surprising. You know, I like that it is
Mm-hmm.
another sort of inversion of expectations. There's a lot of that in this movie, and a lot of it, I think, comes up.
Well, because I think we talked, I'll mention friend of the show, Matt Aldrich again. I think in whatever, maybe...
It's not going to support whatever argument you're about to make, but go on.
whatever, other movies we've done with him. At one point, I remember him mentioning, you want surprises in your movie, but you don't want to ever have an unpleasant surprise.
Yeah, well, that's what we talk about all the time, isn't it? It's like when you do if you sometimes you can do an inversion for its own sake, and it's just the wrong choice. You know,
Yeah.
it's just another just a different version of a wrong choice.
Mm-hmm. But in this case, it's a pleasant surprise to see.
Yeah, and people,
how capable he was.
And people treat it like a sort of nuke the fridge moment, and I really don't see it like that.
No, I don't either.
Anakin loses half an arm,
mm-hmm.
which I don't know if it's a callback, upping the ante, or a flash forward. Technically, all three.
All three. I was gonna say. I think it's all three.
Yeah. And it, this
I see your hand and raise you a forearm, sir.
And things do end differently from Duel of the Fates. So, in the last movie, they killed the Sith. Well, as far as they were aware, they killed
as far as we knew at the time.
Yeah, but lost a Jedi. Here, the Jedis are both saved, but the Sith Lord gets away.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we know he's a Sith Lord at this point. They only learned that in retrospect. But
I think we do know.
Is it the Force lightning?
We just haven't been told. Huh?
The Force lightning that's the giveaway.
The Force lightning, the taking of the plans. There's a lot.
Can Jedi? Oh,
I know.
Kind of
yeah.
Like, is it only
rabbit hole?
It's a rabbit hole, isn't it? Forget it.
Because all you ever see is you only see Force lightning as evil. So to see a good Jedi throw that shit out of their hands would maybe make you uncomfortable.
And I guess Dooku is the established villain at this point, but if you look at it objectively, there's still a possibility that he's just either a stooge or he's just disillusioned with the Jedi, like everyone should be.
for cause. I'm leaving you for cause.
Yeah. And that and again, like especially when we get into the next movie, you'd be like, no, you know what? I think I'd rather be a separatist than a republic. There's someone defending the republic.
All right.
Dooku's ship. I think we mentioned this in the previous episode. Very steampunk, right? It's like,
very.
Especially that parachute comes out. I'm not really sure of the function of it.
I know.
I mean, do you need a parachute in space? I'm not sure.
I remember seeing that in the preview.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But it kind of reminds me of
Man in the Flying Machines.
Remember so long ago when we watched 2010. Kind of reminds me of that.
Well, was the parachute there? Or was it?
I don't know. Some sort of parachute that comes out, I think, to maybe slow down the ship.
Oh, well, yeah. I'm sure they use parachutes in our space travel.
Yeah.
I guess what? Yeah. Well, again, maybe. I just assume that everything to do with space in the Star Wars movies ignores real world physics. So when you see like a parachute, it's like you can't have it both ways, right? Either you observe physical reality.
There's no air in space.
There's no in between. There's an air and space museum.
There you
go. And he goes back to Palpatine.
Yeah. And once again, everything's coming together just as he saw it.
And that's what I can't figure out, like, because I've seen it now and I know, I can't remember if this was a confirmation of an assumption I already had, because it's so confusing in terms of which side Dooku's on throughout the movie.
I always think he's with Palpatine.
But but there's no evidence of that. And all he does is say,
except that he shows up to see him at the end.
Right, but before that, do you still think he's just kind of like a rogue agent?
For the Jedi or for Palpatine?
No,
What's your question?
For him, he's like just a he's just I don't like the Jedi, I don't like the Sith.
Oh, so literally playing
I'm
his
leading
own
the
game.
Separatists. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I always had the sense he was with Palpatine, and this is all at his behest.
But he's so old to be an apprentice. I mean, I can't get through. I can't
He
get my
should be
head
the master.
around it.
Yeah.
He should be his own master, and then that maybe they join forces at some point. But
Yeah, but at a certain point, Tom, you just want Christopher Lee in your fucking movie.
I'm not saying I don't want him in the movie, but I think he could be in the movie without being an apprentice who's older than the man who's his master.
That's true.
I feel like they could have.
You can blame the Phantom Menace. Always two there are.
Or why couldn't he be like a kind of Tarkin-like character?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Yeah.
And then that would be even better because then you'd have a Grand Moff.
Then it would make more sense if it was
Lee and a Peter Cushing.
If it was, there are
You'd have
always
Dracula and Van Helsing as
because it's the same for the
Grand Moffs.
Jedi. The Jedi are always two. There's always a master and a Padawan, so it's the same thing, but you can have more. So if he was his own master and had a Padawan, like in Clone Wars,
yeah,
that would make more sense.
That's never been said before.
I know.
If it were more like Clone Wars, it would all
I can't
make
believe
sense.
it fell out of my mouth. I'll tell you what's deeply unsettling, watching the Jedi watch an entire army of clones and not thinking, this makes me uncomfortable.
Well, Yoda does.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Because, when Obi-Wan mentions victory, and this is also the part of the movie that I really respect and appreciate, is that they end on an anti-war note.
Mm-hmm.
At a time when Hollywood and America is fiercely pro-war.
Yeah.
And it takes mainstream media years to catch up to this
idea,
this ambivalence about, starting a war, and everyone being behind it, and everyone being in favor of it, and that's a creepy. This movie recognizes that's a creepy thing and something you should be wary of.
Yeah.
And that's what America is unproblematically going out into Iraq and Afghanistan.
Sure.
And
they secretly wed.
Yeah, I like the proto stormtroopers and Star Destroyers. Right, I like the sort of militarization, the Imperial theme. I mean, I think this is a legitimate piece of the puzzle, right? Of like, okay, this is how this all began.
Right. And you guys are gonna be fucked.
Yeah. But it ends with a droid-attended wedding. A droid-only wedding.
I know. These are the only witnesses.
They only serve their kind here. And, it's an obligatory milestone, right, in the storytelling. We need them to be...
Sure.
Well, actually, we don't need them to be married. They could just be in... I don't know how the galaxy feels about living in sin. I'm sure it's fine on Coruscant. Looks like a pretty permissive society to me.
Sure.
But again, it's like ending on a very romantic romance genre note. That final shot with the sweeping music and the the long shot and the silhouettes.
Well, we're wrapping up their Love Boat episode portion of their Act 2.
Absolutely.
Falling in love moments. Yeah.
Yeah. Obi-Wan Private Eye ended with the galaxy being launched into war, which I don't think was a twist that anyone saw coming.
And he thinks it was a victory.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, and Obi-Wan is the most pro-war of them all.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we first find him, General Kenobi. You served my father in the Clone War.
Yeah, right.
So I guess it's trying to catch up to that.
Got to get there.
Yeah, except Yoda, Yoda's the one who's also got the army, so it's like I understand he has buyer's remorse, but he's the one who went and filled.
You went and picked him
He
up.
filled the order. He filled the clone
Yeah.
order, didn't he? He was like,
I'm here for my
Yes.
clons.
so much invoicing
Here for
there
my
is.
clones, am I?
Payroll you would not believe.
Well,
That's the end of the movie.
there you have it.
Yeah,
Attack of the Clones.
indeed.
Your favorite.
Yes, my favorite. Yeah, my favorite. Not ultimately.
No, yeah.
There's 4 Star Wars movies I like more than this
Close to
So
my
far.
favorite
so far.
so far.
Bearing in mind 2 of those are J.J. Abrams movies. And I guess this is the film began with a visual reference to Empire Strikes Back, and it ends with one too, because Empire Strikes Back is the droids and Luke and Leia,
Yeah, I do think it does harken back to me, the end.
whereas Star Wars ends with the ensemble shot, and so does Phantom Menace.
Right.
But yeah, it doesn't make any sense in terms of Jedi and Sith, but at least up until this point.
No, yeah.
'Cause
They're two very different. They're in two very different places.
yeah, you know how Return of the
narratively.
Jedi ends with an old man in the desert and a farting camel.
Yeah. Well, credit check.
Yeah,
You sounded like it was an ominous task.
I was surprised, or maybe I wasn't surprised to learn that there was another screenwriter.
Hmm.
There is another, Jonathan Hales.
That is surprising to me.
So it's slightly inaccurate to say that George Lucas didn't collaborate with anybody. But
Right.
again, it's, I think, minimal contribution here. But he certainly didn't write it on his own, which I think is interesting, given that it sort of feels a bit more like a sci-fi movie outside of the Lucas. I don't know. Maybe I'm putting too much in.
Yeah. Right.
I wonder how much this guy contributed to the storytelling.
Hmm.
Ben Burt's dual roles as editor have been combined into one. I think they credit him as sound and visual editor. And it's
Okay.
we need to we haven't got time to credit him separately. Again, the same comment I make every time about the legacy stars getting higher billings than they should. I don't know what Oliver Ford Davis has on George Lucas to get such a high billing. I mean, he's in seconds of this movie, and he's right up there with Ian McDiarmid again.
That's awesome.
It must be in his contract. Sound recordist Paul Salty Brincat. Now, is this nickname based on his personality?
Get out of my booth!
Right. Is he a salty guy?
Yeah.
Or is he have the nickname because his last name is nearly Brine?
There you go.
There's a credit here that is just thanks to all the Australian construction crew. I've noticed that in like the credits,
I noticed that credit actually.
we're still at a period where you want to make the credits as short as possible, so someone's gonna get a kiss off, and this time it's the Australian construction crew. They're the ones who get the multi-credit. One of the credits is listed as location apprentice editor. I like to think that there's a Vader Palpatine like relationship between the editor and the apprentice editor. That these location apprentice editors are always trying to kill the location editor.
That's amazing.
There's a Cypher Diaz like character in the credits too, because at the end it says in memory of Steve Bell, who painted starships in this movie. He worked on he did the starship painting, and he died in a car accident near Skywalker Ranch. So
That's a bummer.
he sort of followed a Cypher Diaz like path.
Yeah, right.
Makes me think maybe foul play was involved.
Where was George Lucas on that day?
I was in the Skywalker Ranch, now 3 miles from where he died.
I don't go anywhere.
I don't leave my home.
Special thanks, British Musicians Union. And given Lucas's history with unions, this has to be because of a waiver. He got their labor non-union, and that's why they're being thanked. It's got to be. There's always something. There's always like a kind of quite scabby credit like that somewhere in the somewhere like you're like, yeah, George Lucas has circumvented some union rules to get that. You just know it. That's all I have.
That's it?
Didn't you have one? Didn't you have a credit check note about bugs?
Bugs?
Didn't you
Did I say that?
About bugs, flying creatures, bugs? No? Okay.
No.
All right.
I don't think so.
The only other thing I had to say about
you can't just walk into a room and say bugs.
True.
John Hurd, big.
Is that what it is? I didn't. It's a long time since I've seen Big. I'm reluctant to go back to it because I feel it might be creepy.
Yeah, it is.
The only other thing I have to say about the credits is in the IMAX version, they had to get it down to under 2 hours, so they cut the credits and just put a.
Yeah, you mentioned that they. Yeah.
And they just put a link up to a website where you could get the credits, and I just want to say, I don't know why we've abandoned that method of crediting people. In this multimedia age of convergence, I feel like this would be an entirely appropriate way to get out of the movie theater faster.
I like sitting and watching the credits.
Yeah, but I don't want the credits to be... I want it to be that idea. I want it to be like the Planet of the Apes. That's my ideal credits. It's like 3 people.
Or Jaws.
And the sound of waves. Same thing. It's 3 people and the sound of waves. It's the perfect.
Exactly.
That's what I mean. That's how you make a perfect movie. The credits have to be part of that, and you can't do that with 12 minutes of credits. With fucking caterers having their name up there. It's like, I assume somebody fed them. I don't care who it is. They didn't die during filming. Someone fed them. Okay, why?
Right.
It's gonna happen regardless of who they
Somebody
hire.
kept reminding them to put on masks in between takes. We get it.
Well, that's in a sense. I think that's. I don't know. It's like if it's just a vendor for hire, they don't need to be in the credits, right? Someone's gonna do that job. It doesn't really matter who it is.
Stars, assistants, their drivers. I don't know that that's pertinent information.
Yeah, marketing people. Like, that's just their job. They're not doing the job for the reward. That's their job. They're doing the job for the salary. I sound awful, but I'm tired of it. It's bloated. It's too much.
It is. They are too long.
Put a link up there.
All right. Take it easy. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, 2 down, 1 to go. That's Attack of the Clones. Coming up next, Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
You are?
Sure. We're almost done.
I'm not excited to end on such a downer.
That's true.
But
there's nothing you can do about that, though, is there?
No.
He's got to become Darth Vader. You got to burn that body. Cut off a bunch of limbs. And really fuck him up.
That's true. Maybe that's the problem, is that they've got to get there. Well, we'll find out.
The only question is, while we talk about it, who will have the high ground?
Well, there is some, in terms of like quality, there is some high ground in the movie. Not many, but there are.
Not much. Yeah. We'll get there. Next week. Stay tuned, everybody. All right. We want to know what you think of this film, though. Attack of the Clones. So find us on Facebook, find us on Instagram, or the site that used to be known as Twitter, and is now some other obscure piece of shit letter.
Yeah, there's only so many notifications from right-wing pundits that I can block. I think our time with Twitter with X may be done.
Yeah, it might have to be. Send an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com. For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, Michael Shantz here. I'm from the How Dare You Awards. Say goodbye, Tom.
Oh, this is such a drag.
Oh, fuck. Yeah.
He says that because
You could cut that easy.
he's being dragged. That's the joke.
I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had one, maybe two craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beer. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.